Hello, my name is Louise, and if you don't follow me already, you can find me at Louise Does Life on pretty much every social media, I think now. Yeah, so last week I filmed a video talking about my diet, the fact that I decided to stop eating meat, and what that meant, but I realised that it was a bit like wishy-washy. In some places I don't have like hard lines, and I thought a lot of people would have a lot of questions about it, so I decided to follow up with a Q&A this week. So without further ado, I have my iPad and I'm going to answer your questions. The first question is, do I plan to go vegan someday? And I kind of addressed this in the last video, but at the moment I see veganism as this like ideal to work towards, or as this like philosophy rather than I don't know how to explain it. So basically, as I said in my last video last week, I am already like 80% vegan at the moment. Pretty much any food I cook inside my house that's not pre-processed or pre-made is vegan. I am really trying to eat a lot more vegan food. The reasons I'm not vegan are because it can be really difficult to do, especially when going to restaurants or when having other family members cater for you. And so that's why I'm not vegan. It's not because I think that it's not because of my ethical beliefs, it's because of practicalities, and I believe that's okay to, you know, take practicality into consideration when making decisions like this. Will I ever go vegan? I don't know. Maybe one day I'll decide that I care so much about the ethics that I don't, that I will, you know, that I'll have to go out of my way to choose restaurants that do cater to it. I'll have to be uncomfortable in family situations when I ask them to cater for me. I know some people believe that that's the right thing to do, and I don't know. But as I said, at the moment I do try and eat vegan food where possible. I do want to be vegan. The reasons that I'm not vegan are because it's difficult, not because I believe that being vegetarian is right and being vegan is optional. The next question is, why do I think it's better to eat gelatin than to eat meat? So as I said in my last video, if you ask me what I truly identify as when it comes to my diet, I would say that I eat a plant-based diet, but I've started telling people that I'm vegetarian just because it's like a much more commonly used word and it's easy for people to understand. But I do still eat things like gelatin, and some like animal products that are hidden in foods. So the question is, why do I think that's better than eating meat? The simple answer is, and it's very similar to the last answer, is that I don't think it is. When it comes to ethics, I feel like it's exactly the same thing, but it just is about practicality again. Trying to avoid things like gelatin and traces of animal products can be much harder, so I'm not beating myself up if my diet is 95% vegetarian instead of 100% vegetarian. And also it just, I feel like this is a controversial thing, but there have been social things where I'm eating food with other people or with family members or friends, especially if someone else is cooking and they're already catering to me by making it vegetarian. To make something vegan or completely vegetarian, like no gelatin, something like that, can be really difficult, and it can cause like arguments, and it can also mean that I can't sit down and have this meal that my friends are planning to share. And at the moment I'm prioritizing those social things over having a 100% vegetarian diet. My family are big meat eaters and I want to go vegetarian, but it's super hard because my family are very judgmental. Do you have any tips? I kind of struggle with this a lot. I have found that my family have been very understanding, but when I talk to them, part of the reason that they say is that because I'm an adult now and I can make my own decisions and that I'm not growing anymore. And obviously I can't give you a definitive answer on whether you do or not because I did eat animal products during my teens, but I found that my family are respectful enough to the point where they will cook vegetarian food for me and they will accommodate for me. But the two things that I've noticed are, firstly, that it's always a topic of conversation, and I hate this so much. It's basically impossible to have a meal where we don't talk about the fact that I'm vegetarian. And the second thing is that they see it very much as a personal lifestyle choice, which is something I want to make a whole nother video blog post about. But like the reasons I'm vegetarian or that I eat a plant-based diet are because of the planet and ethics, and those things to me aren't a personal dietary decision that I made. And I found that people aren't really willing to talk about it, so I can definitely understand and like about this and about it being really hard to talk about it with your family. My advice is just to be easy on yourself. Like as I said, when I was at home with my parents during lockdown, and I didn't ask them to make vegan food for me. They did make vegetarian food for me, but I relaxed my own diet and I was eating lots of cheese and dairy and eggs, because sometimes it just wasn't worth having those difficult conversations, in my opinion. I know some people would disagree with that and say that's wrong, but it can be really difficult, especially because I was living with them day in, day out, so I was just eating a lot more animal products. But it's a thing where I suggest starting slowly, like see if you can eat meat less times a week, if you can get down to eating meat, especially if you're doing it for like climate change reasons. If you can get down to eating meat 1 or 2 times a week, that is huge for the planet, if you think about it like that. So I think that would be my advice. Just take it slow and be easy on yourself, and don't be put off from doing a little bit. I think that's the motto with this whole thing that I've been trying to talk about, is just because you can't be entirely vegan doesn't mean you shouldn't, go halfway. If you can reduce your meat intake by half, that's still incredible for the planet. So see what you can do there. The next question is, how do I become vegetarian when there aren't any vegetarian products easily accessible to me? So I have products such as Quorn or Linda McCartney, like fake meat products, maybe twice a week, about that often, not all the time. So the other 5 nights of the week, I'm not eating those things. I have moved away from the fact that meals have to be like meat to veg potatoes, because in those, like if you do want to have like meat and potatoes and veg, you do kind of need a meat substitute if you're being vegetarian. But there are actually loads of dishes you can cook where you don't even need meat substitutes. So like curries, stir fries, I made some falafel the other day. There's loads of things, and I would really suggest just looking up vegan recipes. You'll find that a lot of vegan recipes don't use those kind of products, so there is still loads of ways you can eat more vegetarian food. Again, even if you don't want to eat it every day, try and find some really fun recipes that you like that just happen to not involve meat, or that don't involve meat, and eat those more often, and I would really recommend doing that. I have on my blog a list of my favourite vegan recipes that are online. I don't share ones that I find in recipe books because I think they're like copyrighted. I don't want to get in trouble for sharing those, but any that I find on the internet I have links to on my blog. Do I eat fake meat products so that it tastes like you're having meat but you're not? Yes, I eat a lot of Linda McCartney products and some Quorn products, although I try a lot of Quorn isn't vegan because it has egg in it, but some things are. For example, their fishless fingers are great, and those are actually vegan. So just check with Quorn products, but I believe most Linda McCartney products are vegan, but again, I always check because some of them have like egg and milk in them. But I try and buy the ones that are entirely vegan. So yes, I do eat this. I know some people would disagree, but I personally don't think it's wrong to enjoy the taste of meat. So there's a YouTuber called Earthling Ed, and he talks about this before, and he's like, well, some people use the argument that steak is delicious and therefore I can't be vegetarian. And he's like, I'm not saying that steak isn't delicious. Steak is delicious. I just don't want to eat it because of my beliefs. But that doesn't mean that we can't make something that tastes like steak, because I know why some people think that's wrong. Like, why would you want to eat something that tastes like an animal? If the act of eating an animal is wrong, why do you want to simulate that? I can understand that, but personally, I ate meat for the first 20 years of my life, and I loved it, and so I do miss those products and I want them, and I think they taste great, and if they're not harming any animals, I personally don't see the problem with that. Yeah, I think that's my rant. They can also be a great way of getting protein into your body, because a lot of them are like packed with protein, although there are other ways of getting protein into your diet. You don't need to eat those things to get a sufficient amount of protein in your diet. Another reason why I eat those products is just because they're so convenient. They are the kind of things that you can just throw in the oven, say with some chips and some veg, and so when I'm really busy during the week, before coronavirus took over the world, back when I was really busy, they were a great quick meal, and that was why I would turn to them sometimes, because you can still have convenient vegan food. What was my reason for becoming vegetarian in the first place? So the first reason I became vegetarian was the climate. I learned a lot about the impacts of animal agriculture on the climate. If you want to learn more about this, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I would really recommend watching the Cowspiracy documentary. I think that's a great documentary for everyone to watch because it doesn't contain lots of gruesome images of animals being slaughtered. So if you don't want to see those things, that documentary I don't think it has any, it might have a tiny bit, but it really, like, that's not what the documentary is about. The documentary is about showing how big an impact the animal agriculture industry has on the climate, and that is the first reason that I became vegetarian. But it's one of those things where now that I'm just slowly watching more documentaries, watching more YouTube about it, and I'm learning about all these other things. And I do now think a lot about the ethics, but I wasn't really thinking about the ethics when I started, if I'm being honest. I was reading this article the other day, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but this guy was saying that he started a 5-year research project into sustainable animal farming, and after the first year he went entirely vegan because he just realised that sustainable animal farming in our current world is just not possible. Yeah, and I believe that. My parents are always big preachers of like buying meat from a local butcher's and making sure it's free range and organic, which, if you put the ethical argument of whether it's okay to eat animals or not to the side, there are two main issues left, and the first is labelling and accreditation can be really undefined and people don't realise what it means. So for example, for a chicken to be free range, it only has to have like a metre squared to walk in. It doesn't have to have a huge field to walk in, and a lot of people assume that these labels mean things that when you go and look up what they actually mean, they don't. And so you buying free range eggs doesn't mean that this chicken lived a really happy life. It can mean that this chicken lived in like luxury battery farming, basically. And the second issue is that I don't see how we're going to feed the going of 8 billion people on this planet in a sustainable way. If you look at like how many animals are crammed into these farms, there's no way we could put all those animals out in big fields. There just isn't like the space and resources. So if it's not possible, then why are we trying to pretend that it is? The next question is, do I still eat eggs? As I said, I'm not entirely vegan, so I do still occasionally eat eggs, but I found this recently, like the more I'm learning, the more I'm trying not to. And I've been eating a lot of scrambled tofu instead of scrambled eggs. I am really moving away from eggs in a big way, but I will still eat them occasionally, and I might still use them in baking, but I'm trying to eat them less. But when I'm at home, we tend to buy free-range organic eggs from our greengrocers, which I know I just said is like not always the best thing, but we're trying. And here in Bristol, I will make the effort of going to a local farm shop where they're coming from a local farm, because you can look up this farm and you can see that these chickens do live in like a big open field, and they come zero waste because you can take your own egg box and fill them up. So if I buy eggs in Bristol, I will make the effort of going to that farm shop, because I believe that's the right thing to do. But as I said, even then, I've not bought any since I've been back in Bristol for like the last 2 weeks, because I'm just trying to eat less where I don't need to. I realise you never actually need to, but I might still buy some, and I might still use them in baking and things, but for now I'm just trying to avoid them and eating more tofu instead. There's a big debate in my brain of whether it's better to buy tofu in plastic or eggs. I struggle with this a lot, and at the moment we're leaning towards the tofu in the plastic, but yeah. Why did I not just go vegetarian instead of vegan if I'm trying to avoid eating meat? So I think if you talk to most people who are vegetarian or vegan, the reasons for doing either are exactly the same. Either you're worried about the climate or you're worried about animal ethics. And for both of those reasons, it's better to be vegan than vegetarian, because animal products like dairy industry and eggs still, it's still not ethically great. It still puts animals in really bad situations, and it also still has a really bad impact on the planet. Cows take up loads of energy and resources to produce milk, and it's just a bit unnecessary. So for both of those reasons, it's best to be vegan. It's better to be vegan, and I think most people you talk to are vegetarian. It's again because of this like taking practicality into consideration. I'm thinking like, I'm only one human and I can only do so much, and we do live in a world that tells us that we should eat meat and that we should eat dairy and eggs, and being vegan, and being vegetarian is already enough of like a rebellion, and they're going against that, and being vegetarian is already like difficult, and I said I've had like difficult conversations with my family about it, and it can cause me lots of inconvenience, and being vegan is like even more so. So I didn't go vegetarian because I wanted to stop eating meat. I went vegetarian because I wanted to reduce my impact on the planet and I wanted to reduce animal cruelty. And for both of those reasons, it's better to be vegan than it is to be vegetarian, but it's just about practicality and what I can realistically do as a human. Yeah, did that answer that? I'm aware that there's this whole like, yes, I could be vegan and it would just be a big inconvenience for me, and why should those animals die for my inconvenience? I'm aware that that's a thing, but we very much live in a world that doesn't cater towards being vegan. And so I've been thinking a lot about, like, I wrote some blog posts about this thing that I've called like the 80% rule, and just doing the most. Like, I think doing 80% is kind of enough for now, because we live in this world where most people eat meat like every day. If I'm 80% vegan, to me that's still huge. And the reason why I don't do the extra 10% isn't because I think it's ethically correct. It's because, you know, I have other interests and hobbies, and I think that my time can be put to better use, including being put towards other issues in the world. So I also worry about plastic, and I also worry about like my footprint. And if I want to worry about all of these things, it's very hard to do everything perfectly. So I'm trying to do everything imperfectly rather than doing one single thing perfectly. Does that make sense? Don't you think vegan food is limited? Kind of. You do have less options when you eat vegan food, especially when you go out to restaurants, because most restaurants don't cater towards veganism. But things that to bear in mind are, obviously when you Google recipes, there are less vegan recipes. I don't think this is because there are less things you can cook with vegan food. I think it's because we live in a world where most people eat meat, and therefore people aren't putting time and energy into making those vegan recipes. That doesn't mean it's not possible. So you just have to like get creative. And also, since I've come back to uni and I have to cook for myself again, I have been using this app on my phone called Recipe Keeper, and I've been compiling this list of vegan recipes, and I think I'm already at like almost 20 recipes. And I was thinking about it when I saw this question, and I think people use this argument of like, oh, I need so much variety as a reason not to be vegan. But like 20 recipes? That means I can go 3 weeks without eating the same meal. And that's loads. Most people who eat meat don't have that many recipes in their repertoire. So you don't need like 100 recipes to get by. You need like a dozen. And that still means that you only have to eat the same food every 2 weeks. And that's not a difficult thing, in my opinion. So in some ways, yes, it is limited. You're definitely limited when you go out to restaurants, which I said is why when I go out to restaurants I don't worry so much about being vegan, because I don't want to not be able to go to those social occasions because we're going to a restaurant that doesn't serve vegan food. But I don't think it's limited in that sense. You just have to get creative, and also, you know, think about how many recipes you know now. I'm sure you can learn as many vegan ones. Okay, that's all of the questions. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to learn more about me, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Louise Does Life. And I will see you very soon.